Okay, going to talk about the PTO on the 4710. This is going to be true on all the 10 series machines. They have a solenoid. It's actually a coil and a solenoid that controls the on-off of the PTO on the machine. And these are really common both on the 4000 and the 4010 series machines, and probably even the 3000 machines. It's really common. If you don't use the PTO, you've got a machine with a backhoe that's on it that you're not using the PTO that much. The PTO valve that turns it on and off will become stuck. And what happens is you got the machine on, you're on the machine, it's running, you pull the PTO lever up, the light comes on, the machine stays running, everything seems great, and you check the back of the machine, and the PTO is not moving. It's not moving, right? It's not engaged, but the machine has indicated that it's on. The light's on the switch area. This light, actually, I don't know if that light comes on. That's just the code light. But the light on the dash, if the dash was on the machine, there is a dash light that comes on. PTO is active, the switch is up, the machine's on, it's not shutting itself off. There's no overrides going on with the safety issues on the seat. Everything's good, but the PTO is just not on, right? That's a real common thing. And the way to fix that, and I've seen this a ton on these machines. And again, it's usually the ones that doesn't really get much use on the PTO. I typically buy machines with backhoes on them. Actually, I only buy machines usually with backhoes on them, so I see it a lot with the backhoe when it's on there. It's not being used, the PTO, that much, and it's seized up the switch, the mechanism for the PTO. And I'm going to show you now how to unseize that and where that is on this machine so that you can try this yourself. Costs you nothing. It takes a little bit of time, a little bit of knowledge, and it's not going to cost you a thing. Okay, I'm underneath the machine, and the first thing you're going to do is you are going to disconnect these two wires. This is the solenoid and a coil that pull in and move out to engage the switch for the PTO on the machine, right? This is really a simple way that this machine controls whether the PTO is on or off. So what you want to do is you want to disconnect this connector right here for this coil, and you are going to test that for 12 volts. You want to make sure that the machine is off, but in the run position, and you've got somebody either on the seat or you've overridden the seat switch and the PTO switch is on. When that is on, you should get 12 volts at this coil. That is the first test. You want to make sure you're getting voltage to the coil with the PTO switch on and the safety switch on the seat on or bypassed. That's the first test. If that passes and you get 12 volts, your coil and all your switch wiring and harness wiring is all good. There's no issue there. The problem is going to be in the valve itself, in the actual plunger mechanism area itself. So what you're going to do, the next test is you're going to take this nut and you're going to take this off. You're going to slide this coil right off of the plunger mechanism. And you are going to take the plunger mechanism out of the area, right? This whole thing will screw right out of the PTO valve area, right? The on-off valve area. So once you get this out, and I'm not showing it to you, but it's really easy, right? Once you take the coil off, you take the nut off, you slide the coil out, you put that on the ground. You're going to take a wrench and you're going to take out the actual valve mechanism, the plunger mechanism. You unscrew that, right? That is really the solenoid part that's going in and out, right, from the voltage in the coil. And what's happening is that when it goes out, that valve is stuck. There's a mechanical valve behind this that controls the on, right? And that valve, there's a little button that'll be there, and there's a little plunger, a little rod that goes into that little button, and that button is just stuck. And all you have to do, this is so easy, I've done this so many times, all you have to do is take some WD-40 on that button, and you want to push it in and out with either a ratchet extension or some kind of a flat screwdriver that won't damage it, and you want to operate the on-off button to the PTO mechanism manually with your hand. You do that a few times and it frees up, right? It unseizes, and that's it. Like once that's unseized, it's a very easy spring-loaded valve. It has probably, I don't know how much resistance is against that spring, but it's very, very easy to operate. You'll feel it. Once that frees up, you put your actuator valve assembly, you screw that back in, you put your coil back on with the nut back on it, you plug in your connector, and you try it. And I bet you 9 times out of 10, I've done this 10 times out of 10 for myself, and this has always worked. It's always been that. So that's what you want to do. If you have trouble getting the valve mechanism unscrewed from the PTO switch assembly area, you can use a little bit of heat, right? You don't want to make that hot. You can warm up that area, and then you can take a pair of vice grips on there or get the right socket, and you can get that right out. And matter of fact, I think I used a little bit of heat from a torch to heat that up just a little bit, the housing. And I was able to undo that with a pair of vice grips on the valve assembly itself. Comes right out. No, it's not a big deal. Worst case scenario is if the valve assembly is seized up, you can put WD-40 on that as well, right? So all that's going to be fixed with WD-40 and manually moving it, in and out, maybe 20 or 30 times, get it all freed up nice and loose, normal, put it all back together, pull your PTO switch, and I bet you the PTO is going to start working. You can try that and see if it works. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out, but hopefully this is helpful. I wanted to add on that, let's say for some reason you go to turn it on, the PTO, and it's still not coming on. You want to test the coil. I kind of skipped over that when I was testing the connection. Just because the connection was getting 12 volts doesn't mean that the coil is working, right? And the way you test the coil is there's a couple ways, but since if you have it all back together again, just like this, the easiest way is just take off that nut, slide that coil off, and then turn the machine, or put the PTO on, and get a piece of metal like a screwdriver or a socket extension and put it through the center of that coil. It should be magnetized, right? It should have a magnetized feel to it, and it should hold metal to it. And that's what's kind of going on inside that plunger. It magnetizes, it pulls the plunger in, and it does the job of the valve turning on and off, right? So that is the easiest way to test that coil. So I would say that's what I would do if it still doesn't work. If the coil is testing good and you've done the cleanup procedures I explained earlier, I would have to say make sure the machine is on when you test the PTO being on. So if the PTO won't turn unless the machine's on, I know that's pretty obvious, but just want to say that as well. So this whole PTO drive line is dependent on the machine being on, right? Because that's going to power the PTO. So make sure, as a last resort, the machine's on. You put the PTO switch in the on position, and if it still doesn't work, there is definitely something else going on with the hydraulics perhaps on the machine that feed the PTO switch and or the internals on the PTO itself. So it's going to require further troubleshooting. I'm not going to cover that in this video, but if you still have issues, feel free to reach out. I can help you through the shop manual and we can kind of figure out what's next. But again, 10 times out of 10, I've never had any other issue besides this on the PTO switch areas. So hopefully this will help you and solve your problems as well.